Evolution of the Indian economy. After 1757, when the East India Company took over the governance of Bengal, the British relationship with India became exploitative, as exports to Britain and opium exports to China were financed out of the tax revenue from Bengal. There is not much evidence of significant transfer of European technology to Asia. To understand why, it is useful to scrutinize the experience of China and India, as they accounted for 3/4 of the Asian population and GDP in 1500 AD. The economic profile of India was in complete distress at the time of independence. Being a typical case of colonial economy, India was serving a purpose of development not for herself but a foreign land, the United Kingdom. Both agriculture and industry were having structural distortions while the state was playing not even a marginal role. During the half-century before India became independent, the world was having accelerated development and expansion in its agriculture and industry on the shoulders of the active role being played by the states, with the same happening in the UK itself. 1. There was not only the unilateral transfer of investable capital to Britain by the colonial state, the drain of wealth, but the unequal exchange was day by day crippling India's commerce, trade and the thriving handloom industry. 2. The colonial state practiced policies which were great impediments in the process of development in the country. Throughout the colonial rule, the economic vision that the state had was to increase India's capacity to export primary products, and increase the purchase-import of the British manufactured goods and raise revenues to meet the drain of capital as well as meet the revenue requirements of the imperial defence. 2. The social sector was a neglected area for the British rulers, which had a negative impact on the production and productivity of the economy. India remained a continent of illiterate peasants under British rule. At the time of independence, its literacy was only 17% with 32.5 years of life expectancy at birth. 3. Industrialization of India was also neglected by the colonizers. The infrastructure was not built to industrialize India but to exploit its raw materials. Indian capitalists who did emerge were highly dependent on British commercial capital, and many sectors of the industry were dominated by British firms, e.g., shipping, banking, insurance, coal, plantation crops and jute. 4. The pre-independence period was altogether a period of near stagnation, showing almost no change in the structure of production or in the levels of productivity. The aggregate real output during the first half of the 20th century estimated at less than 2% a year or less. 5. The overall economic performance of India under the British rule was very low. According to economic statistician Angus Maddison, there was no per capita growth in India from 1600 to 1870. Per capita growth was a meager 0.2% from 1870 to 1947, compared with 1% in the UK. 6. The per capita incomes of 18 rupees for 1899 and ours 39.5 for 1895 in current prices say the true story of the abject poverty Indian masses were faced with. 71. He repeated famines and disease epidemics during the second half of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. Show the greatest socio-economic irresponsibility and neglect of the British government in India at one hand and the wretchedness of the masses at the other. 8. The political leaders and the industrialists both were very much aware and conscious about the economic inheritance once India became independent. Somehow, these dominant lot of people who were going to lay down the foundation stones of the independent Indian economy were almost having consensual view, even before the independence, on many major strategic issues. State governments should be given a direct responsibility for development. 2. An ambitious and vital role to be assigned to the public sector. 3. Necessity for the development of heavy industries. 4. Discouragement to foreign investment. The need for economic planning. Once India became independent, it was a real challenge for the government of the time to go for a systematic organization of the economy. This was a task full of every kind of challenges and hurdles as the economy had hardly anything optimistic. The need of delivering growth and development was in huge demand in front of the political leadership as the country was riding on the promises and vibes of the nationalist fervor. It was not a simple task. Now the decisions which were to be taken by the political leadership of the time were going to shape the very future of India. Many important and strategic decisions were taken only by 1956 which shaped Indian economic journey till date. Undoubtedly they heavily dominated the pre-reform period, but the post-reform period. Evolution of the Indian economy T3.3 is also not completely free of their impact. To understand the nature and scope of the Indian economy in current times, it is not only useful but essential to go through the facts, reasons and the delicacies which made the economy evolve and unfold the way it evolved and unfolded. A brief overview follows. A topical issue of the debate regarding India has been the choice for the sector which will lead the process of development. The government of the time opted for industry to be India's prime moving force of the economy. Whether India should have gone for agriculture as its prime moving force for better prospects of development is a highly debatable issue even today among experts. Every economy has to go for its development through exploitation of its natural and human resources. There are priorities of objectives set by the economy which is attempted to be realized in a proper time frame. The availability and the non-availability of resources, natural as well as human, are not the only issues which make an economy decide to declare whether it opts for agriculture or industry as its prime moving force. There are many more socio-political compulsions and objectives which play their roles in such decision-making. The political leadership selected industry as the leading force of the economy after independence. This was already decided by the dominant group of the nationalist leaders way back in the mid-1930s when they felt the need for economic planning in India before setting up the National Planning Committee, 1938. Given the available resource base, it seems an illogical decision as India lacked all those prerequisites which could suggest the declaration of industry as its prime mover. Almost no presence of infrastructure sector, i.e., power, transportation and communication. 2. Negligible presence of the infrastructure industries, i.e., iron and steel, cement, coal, crude oil refining and electricity. 3. Lack of investable capital, be the case of either the government or the private sector. 4. Absence of required technology to support the process of industrialization and no research and development. Lack of skilled manpower. 6. Absence of entrepreneurship among the people. Absence of the market for industrial goods. 8. Many other socio-psychological factors which acted as negative forces for the proper industrialization of the economy. The obvious choice for India would have been the agriculture sector as the moving force of the economy because the country was having the natural resource of fertile land which was fit for cultivation. 2. Human capital did not require any kind of higher training. By only organizing our land ownership, irrigation and other inputs to agriculture, India could have gone for better prospects of development. Once there was no crisis of food, shelter, basic health care, etc., to the masses, one goal of development could have been realized: a general welfare of the people. Once the masses were able to achieve a level of purchasing capacity, India could have gone for the expansion of industries. India was capable of generating as much surplus income for its masses as was required by the emerging industries for a market success. The People's Republic of China did the same in 1949. Taking a realistic evaluation of its resources, it declared agriculture as its prime moving force for the economy. The surplus generated out of agriculture was suitably invested to develop the prerequisites for industrialization, and the country went for it in the 1970s. The emergence of industrial China was so vibrant that its impact was felt in the so-called highly developed and industrialized economies of the world. The industrial homework of China catapulted it into a giant. Was the political leadership of independent India not able to analyze the realities as we did above and conclude that agriculture should have been the moving force of the economy in place of industry? Is it possible that Pandit Nehru in command could have missed the rational analysis of the Indian realities? A giant among the Asian visionaries of the time, Maya was still to emerge on the international scene. How India could have not opted for agriculture as its prime moving force, whose leadership had fought the nationalist movement on the Gandhian fervor of villages, agriculture and rural development? Even if Gandhi was not in the government, there were many devout Gandhians in it, and no one should doubt that the main internal force which vibrated throughout the governmental decisions were nothing but Gandhian socialism. There were many decisions which were taken under the influence of the main political force of the times. Still, some very vital ones were influenced by the visionary hunches of the political leadership, mainly being J.L. Nehru. This is why the economic thinking of independent India is considered and said to be nurtured by the Nehruvian economics still today. If we go through the major literatures on the Indian economic history, views of the critics of the time and the contemporary experts, we may be able to feel the answer as to why India went for industry as its prime moving force in place of an obvious and logical choice of agriculture. We should not be happy to know that even today this is a highly debatable issue among experts. Looking at the resources available, agriculture would have been the obvious choice as the prime moving force, PMF, of the economy, i.e., cultivable land and the manpower. But as Indian agriculture was using the traditional tools and technology, its modernization as well as future mechanization, latter to some extent, would have been blocked due to the lack of indigenous industrial support. If we had gone for import, this would have required enough foreign reserves and a natural dependence on foreign countries. By choosing industry as the PMF, we were going to industrialize the economy as well as modernize our traditional mode of farming. 2. The dominant ideology around the world as well as in the WB and the IMF was in favor of industrialization as a means to faster growth which could be translated into faster development. These international bodies were supporting the member countries from every point of view to industrialize. Same was the case with the developed economies. It was possible not only to industrialize faster on these supports, but a hope for emerging as an industrial exporter was also there. Such kind of supports were not being offered by them to an economy going to opt for agriculture as its PMF. Basically, going for the agriculture sector was considered a symbol of backwardness at that time also. The political leadership wanted to carry India ahead, and not in the backward direction. It was only in the 1990s that the world and the WBIMF changed its opinion regarding the agriculture sector, and emphasis on this sector by an economy was no more considered a sign of backwardness. 3. The Second World War has proved the supremacy of defense power. For defense, a country needs not only the support of science and technology but also an industrial base. India also required a powerful defense base for herself as a deterrent force. By opting for industries as her PMF, the economy tried to solve many challenges simultaneously. First, industry will give faster growth. Second, agriculture will be modernized in time. And third, the economy will be able to develop its own defense force. Since the economy had also opted for scientific and technological preparedness, its achievements were to sustain the pace of modernizing world out there. This seems taking place in India to a great extent. 4. Even before independence, there was a socio-economic consensus among social scientists along with the nationalist leaders, that India needed a boost towards social change as the country lagged behind in the areas of modernization. A break from the traditional and outmoded way of life and cultivation of a scientific outlook was a must for the country. Such feelings also made the political leadership of the time go in favor of wholehearted industrialization. By the time India got her independence, the might of industrialization was already proven and there were no doubts regarding its efficacy. Given above are some of the important reasons that worked to make Indian political leadership 3.6 times Indian economy go in favor of industry as the economy's prime moving force. Probably, the resource-related and temperamental realities of India got marginalized in hopes and wishes of a future industrialized and developed India. It is yet impossible to conclude whether the economy has completely failed to do so. Experts have divided opinions on this issue. The last decade of the 20th century, i.e., the decade of the 1990s, saw major changes taking place in the world economic idea about the agriculture sector. It was no more a symbol of backwardness for an economy if it had started emphasizing its agriculture sector as the engine of growth and development. China had proved to the world that how agriculture could be made the prime moving force of an economy and generate internal as well as external strength to emerge as an industrial economy. In the wake of ongoing reform process, India was introspecting almost all economic policies it followed since independence. It was time for the agriculture sector to have the prime attention. A major shift then took place in the Indian economic thinking when the government announced in 2002 that from now onwards, in place of industry, agriculture will be the prime moving force, PMF, of the economy. This was a policy shift of historic importance which was announced by the highest economic think tank of the country, the Planning Commission, as the economy commenced the 10th Plan, July 2002. As per the Planning Commission 11, such a policy shift will solve the three major challenges faced by the economy. Economy will be able to achieve food security with the increase in agricultural production. Besides, the agricultural surplus will generate exports in the globalizing world economy, benefiting out of the WTO regime. 2. The challenge of poverty alleviation will be solved to a great extent as the emphasis will make agriculture a higher income generating occupation and induce growth in the rural economy by generating more gainful employment. 3. The situation of India as an example of market failure will cease. 12. Though the world outlook towards agriculture sector had changed by the early 1990s, the government of India announced the policy shift more than 1 decade later. There is now a consensus among experts, policymakers and the governments alike that for development to take place in India it is necessary to strengthen the sector on which the masses depend for their income and livelihood. More than 65% of the Indian population depends on agriculture and allied activities, while only 18.5% of the gross domestic product, GDP, comes from the sector. 13. It means that above 65% of Indian population shares just 18.5% of the gross. 10. The government of India had shown such an intention in two regular union budgets, i.e., the fiscals January 2000 and February 2001, but has not announced the shift officially. 11. Planning Commission, 10th Five-Year Plan, July 2002, Goal, in Delhi, 2002. 12. It has been argued by economists time and again that India is a typical example of market failure. Market failure is a situation when there are goods and services in an economy and its requirement to, but due to lack of purchasing power the requirements of the people are not translated into demand. Whatever industrial goods and services India had been able to produce, they had stagnated or stunted sales in the market as the largest section of the consumers earned their livelihood from the agriculture sector, which is unable to create a purchasing power to the levels required by the market. As agricultural activities will become more gainful and profitable, the masses depending on it will have the level of purchasing capacity to purchase the industrial goods and services from the market. Thus, the Indian market won't fail. The view has been articulated by Amartya Sen and Jean Dress in their monograph titled India, Economic Development and Social Opportunity, United Nations University, 1996. 13. The Central Statistical Organization, Goal, in Delhi, February 2007. Income generated by the economy. The rest of the population that does not depend on agriculture, i.e., below 35%, share 81.5% the gross income generated by the economy. The gap of income shows the lower purchasing power of the people involved in agricultural activities, which is more than 2/3 of the total population. How market can succeed in such a situation and what to ask of the market economy? As the economy was more in favor of a market economy, the situation of market failure needed to be arrested. The income of the population dependent on the agriculture sector needed strengthening. Though the effects of the policy shift are not clearly visible yet, we may glance at the major policies which are intended towards strengthening of the agriculture sector. New Agriculture Policy, 2000. The policy mainly intends to convert agriculture into the category of industry so that the population dependent on it could earn income and profit out of agricultural activities with the same pace and mode as the industry has enabled the population dependent on industrial activities. 2. National Agricultural Insurance Scheme, 1999 to 2000. The new insurance scheme launched for agriculture intends to provide insurance coverage to all agricultural activities right from seeds, sowing, harvesting to marketing risks and necessary support to which the industry had access but agriculture had no reach. 3. EXIM policy, July 2002. The Export-Import Policy, July 2002 for the first time accepted at the policy level the long-standing opinion of the experts that a 1% increase of the agricultural products in India's exports supplies additional 8,500 rupees crores to evolution of the Indian economy. T3. 7. The agricultural sector. Many policy initiatives were taken to increase the share of agriculture in the total export of the economy. 4. Second Green Revolution, a major program to boost agricultural production with the sustainable approach was launched in 2004 with an initial corpus of 50,000 rupees crore. V. Bharat Nirman, a major program to focus on the agricultural and rural infrastructure, totaling 6 items, was launched by the government in 2005 with the ultimate intention of strengthening rural economy. 6. Others. Similarly, many time-bound programs and schemes have been launched since 2002 which focus on the agriculture sector and the rural areas from different angles: education, electricity, wage, as well as self-employment, healthcare, communication, etc. Looking at the size of the population dependent upon the agriculture sector, comparatively longer government apathy to the agricultural realities and the late start of the reform process in it make things very tough to effect visible changes in the sector in a short time span. It also requires comparatively longer period of time. We will then be able to see the visible results of the policy shift as well as the results of the economic reforms in the agriculture sector provided there remains a continued political commitment to the cause. One positive development of the last decade has been that India has been able to reach a silent political consensus on some of the very important aspects of development, for example on the process of economic reforms, foreign investment, deregulation, social justice, emphasis on agriculture, priority to the social sector, etc., which gives us hope that the economy will be able to take care of the agriculture sector in due course and more accelerated growth and development can be achieved.